One of the biggest challenges facing companies today, and indeed in previous eras, is figuring out how and when to respond to emerging new technologies. This could be artificial intelligence, it could be blockchain, it could be biotechnology, it could be renewable energy. There are always new emerging technologies. And the question is, do you jump on those technologies now, or do you actually hold back? And we can, of course, identify well-known examples from Kodak onwards of companies that were too late in really investing seriously in emerging technologies. But we can also think of companies that jumped in too quickly. The famous case of General Motors creating a battery-powered car, the EV1, back in the late 1990s, for example. You can lose money if you're too early, you can lose a lot of money if you're too late. And so the question about how and when to respond is important. And that's what I address in this paper. The heart of the paper is to say that one of the big questions you have to get to grips with is whether the emerging technology affects how the product is created versus how the product or service is used. And so new technologies, when they are disruptive, they can actually change or make obsolete the way in which the product is developed. And a good example of that would be the big pharmaceutical companies confronting the biotechnology revolution and the biotechnology methods, if you like, for developing drugs completely making obsolete the traditional chemical-based ways of making drugs. That is what I call a supply-side disruption. The other side of the coin is when a new technology affects the way that a product or service is used. And a great example of that would be streaming of TV shows, streaming of movies. If you think about the entertainment industry, think Disney or whatever, think about the way that Netflix and Amazon dramatically changed the whole way in which movies are consumed. That is, in my language, a demand-side disruption because it fundamentally changes the way in which people consume a product. And the purpose of this paper really is to use data I collected on 6 industries, 3 predominantly supply-side affected, 3 predominantly demand-side affected, and to look at the patterns of responses for companies in terms of incumbent companies for how they responded to those very different types of shocks. I won't tell you the whole story now, but the key point is the following, which is that when there is a demand-side disruption, it has a really volatile effect on the industry because the companies who are suddenly faced with changes in user behaviors are scrambling quite often to come up with new business models. That effect is often quite rapid because user behavior can change relatively quickly. So it's a volatile situation which often requires quite a lot of experimentation and change. Whereas a supply-side disruption can be quite sort of challenging, but often in a much more insidious way. The change happens often over many, many years, often in a more predictable way. It took 20 years for biotechnology to fundamentally change the way that drug companies develop their drugs. And so it's more predictable. The ways in which you respond typically are a little bit more gradual, albeit you can't completely ignore those changes. And finally, you can make the point that there are some industries, and of course the film industry is a great example, film meaning Kodak and Fuji, were affected by both supply side and demand side disruptions at the same time. So the paper is intended to map out the nature of these changes and to help companies to think about what are the choices they should make about how and when they respond. You can never completely nail this. You can't say this is the right moment to make the big investment in a new technology. But by understanding the dynamics and the patterns of behavior of other companies, you can certainly make smarter decisions than if you didn't have this insight to help you.